Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday Philosophy Club, which is supported by Aurora Philosophy Institute and the Aurora Philosophy Public Library. This presentation and all discussion is being recorded. Your comments and videos will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. My name is Alla Marchenko, and I'm the Executive Co-Director and the President of the Aurora Philosophy Institute. It's my privilege this evening to once again welcome Shishir Lakhani as our speaker on the topic Some Philosophers of the Indian Subcontinent, an Introduction. Shishir is very well known to most of us, of course. He has had outstanding business career as a successful entrepreneur, and since retirement has been prominent in the non-profit and volunteer sectors, and in public speaking and in distinguished Toastmaster. He's vice president of the volunteer group Associated Senior Executives and a past member of the board of directors of the Heart and Stroke Foundation. He is recipient of the numerous awards, including the Tony Graham Award for Excellence, the Governor General Sovereign Medal, and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the ASE. Over to you, Shishir.
Thank you very much, Alla. If I believed everything, I'd feel very good about myself. Having said that, thank you very much for all of you, fellow philosophers, to be here present. And today I will be sharing the screen with you. Before I proceed to do that, I just wanted to say one piece of tribute to our leader, John, who has been leading this association for a while. And I must say one thing, this is a big day, not only because I'm speaking, guys, that's small. The big part is, of course, it's birthday of somebody who's so distinguished and so well to all of us. It's John Smithen's birthday, guys. Let's give him a big hand.
Happy birthday, John.
Thank you all. I much appreciate it. Maybe we can edit that out when the time comes, but I do appreciate it. Yeah.
So some philosophers from the Indian subcontinent, and I realize I'll be talking about 3 individuals, so the time is going to be limited to each of them. So this is an introduction. I'll be couching my presentation with some caveats. Though from India, 2 generations ago, I'm very knowledgeable, but no expert. I'll be talking about Buddha, Shankara, and Guru Nanak. These are at different times of history, and they're products and thinkers of their own times. I'll provide some historical context and perspective, and some of the dates that go back a long ways may be approximate. After this session on Buddha, I will take a 5-minute break for some discussion, and 5 minutes will probably allow us 2 or 3 questions at the tops. With that said, I would like to begin. Now you notice on the map, India is shown, and on the top, the symbol of Om, which is really a Hindu tradition. And then below that on the left, you'll see Dharma Chakra, which is a Buddhist wheel of life. And on the bottom right, you see Khanda, which is a Sikh traditional symbol. Now, you might see that there is 2 swords surrounding unity in the Khanda tradition. And when I come to that, I'll explain that a little bit more. Some historical context. 3,500 years BC, there was indigenous Dravidian population in India. Around 2500 BC, there was Indus civilization around the Mohenjo-daro. This is the Neolithic and Bronze Age. Around 1500 BC arrived the Aryans. And I put that question mark because I'm sure there were groups of various types. The migration came down from Eurasia through the Caspian steppes and opened up the cross-Asia doorway, bringing with it horses, some say chariots, and metal weapons. These were the times of the Vedic traditions, which is what Hinduism is based upon. The Dravidian culture moved further south and intermingled with the arrival of the Vedic tradition from the north. What is Vedic traditions? This happened around 1500 BC. There were two big Vedas. Number one was the Rig Veda, which is full of mythologies very similar to the mythologies that you might find from Greece or other countries. And there's the Yajur Veda. Yajur Veda was much more the traditional rituals and the day-to-day practices and ceremonies. So that kind of gives you a context of what Vedas are composed of originally. Some of the things that came with the Vedas is the caste structure. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, and Sudras. Brahmins at the peak, Sudras at the bottom. Varna, which is really the caste you're born into. So, and when we discussed Adam Smith not too long ago, he discussed division of labor. My goodness, division of labor was put upon you, upon your birth, because you were defined, in your position in life was already defined. If you're born as a Sudra, you're always going to stay at the bottom. Moving on, I'm not going to make any commentary on that right now. Dharma Shastra. Dharma Shastras are aphorisms that come out of Vedas. There are four main stages defined in the Vedas of what life is all about and how to lead life, for stages. Number one is Artha. Artha means sustenance, comforts, prosperity, survival, all the necessities of comfort in life. The second one is karma, which is a term you probably all heard. It's about your actions and your deeds. And so much of the deeds that you do are supposedly going to be a cause and effect thing. And likelihood is that you pay the price for your deeds. We sometimes notice that in our lifestyles. Number three is dharma. You probably also heard of dharma. Dharma is really the codes, ethics of what to do, what is right, what is wrong, what are the expectations, what are my obligations to not only myself, but to the society around me. And the fourth one is moksha. Now, this is something a little different from what you might have encountered. Moksha is very much like release from the circle of life and death, which continues without stopping unless you find that release through moksha. It's a freedom from the birth and life cycle. Sanskrit is basically the language upon which Hinduism is based. Some of the things about Vedic traditions, hierarchies, which I mentioned in castes. Sacrifices also came with the tradition of Vedic traditions. A lot of horses were sacrificed in what they call yagnas. The karma, causal law, is very much part and parcel of the Hindu tradition. Reincarnation cycle, and then the release from the cycle. Some part of the tradition which I have not covered, which is the deeper side of Hinduism, is the Upanishads. Upanishads were pretty much came much more pronounced in the 950 BC era. This is where it's much less mired in mythologies, gods, goddesses, storylines, but much more so in the philosophical teachings and the ideas which are revered in the deeper Hinduism texts. For example, in the epic period of the Ramayana, it's a story based upon an ideal king. And it really shows you what's the best way to live. And the story is weaved through many heroes and villains and so on. And you may have seen the monkey god Hanuman. Well, he comes from the stories of Ramayana. The other one is Mahabharata, from which stems Bhagavad Gita. So Mahabharata is a battle between cousins, two large families who encounter huge armies from both sides, and it's really a fight for justice. So this is much more of a pragmatic view of life as opposed to the idealistic point which is shown in the Ramayana. It really says it means to an end. The Bhagavad Gita is a conversation which you see in the bottom right picture, where Krishna is speaking as a charioteer to the very renowned warrior Arjuna. Arjuna falls down to his knees and says, I cannot fight my cousins and my uncles and kill them in battle. I would be doing so much damage. And what will my dharma be? My dharma, which is my code of ethics, say I should not kill, especially people I love. And then Krishna explains to him. And this is what Bhagavad Gita is. That explanation goes into many chapters and discusses that there are reasons for just wars, for justice. This is where pragmatism comes out in the Hinduism religion. The key people I'll discuss today is Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, who was around 566 BC. You must have heard of Buddha and Buddhism. He came out of the Hindu tradition. The next one I'll be speaking about moves over into the AD period, 788, Shankara. And he's much more of a philosophical, and he picked up on the Upanishads as opposed to the traditional mythologies. And the final one I'll speak about is Guru Nanak, around 1470 AD. And the reason I brought him into the picture is because he really was the founder of the tradition of Sikhism, people who you see in turbans and the beards. And I'll explain to you how that came about. But these are all three of these people are really rooted in Hinduism. Buddha, born around 566 BC, established the Dharma principles of how to live ethically and to be compassionate to all living things. He sought the middle way, no extremes, no absolutism, no castes. Big change from Hinduism, no castes. Stay calm, meditate, find your peace within. No class systems, because caste system is gone. He also did not condone sensual indulgence on one hand, or severe asceticism, where you become very much a life of your own, very alone, very solitude. He, however, did believe in the rebirth and the reincarnation, and also called the life that we lead samsara. In Hinduism, it's called sansar. Sansar is really the thing that draws us into living things, obligations, families, all kinds of things that we do in order for us to succeed as a society. The spread of Buddhism came about with King Ashoka, who is the great king of the Mauryan dynasty around 230 BC. This is just after Alexander had visited India. So I'm just giving you some context that there already now is an established link with Greece or Macedonia when Alexander came by. Ashoka spread the religion of Buddhism into Afghanistan, China, Japan, Southeast Asia, and is today the fourth largest religion in the world. There are many streams to Buddhism, but the two primary ones are Mahayana, which is mostly practiced in China and Tibet. And then the south of India, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and the other parts of Asia is the Theravada tradition. The big message here is there is a rebirth quite often a consequence of your karma from the previous life. You may have heard the term suffering. brought about when you talk about Buddhism. It's really the impermanence. Each moment you are born from preceded its cause and effect, the karma. And the challenge of change, which remains constant, and we talk about it in the world of business, we talk about it in a day-to-day life. The challenge of change never stops, and that causes a degree of anxiety. And I think that the translation into suffering is a bit of an overdone translation. It is more anxiety, and the fear of impermanence is what I think is really meant in Sanskrit. The third kind of, or there are other traditions of Buddhism. One of them I can recall is Vajrayana in Tibet. So there's a few different tracks of Buddhism. He was born in the northwest part of India, in the Bihar province, as Siddharth, in a Hindu Kshatriya caste. Kshatriya caste are the warrior caste. And he was from a well-to-do family. As they always say, it's difficult to be a philosopher on an empty belly. So you might have noticed most of the people who do become philosophers are really have the time, ability, resources to dwell into these games of mind. He was a political thinker, an impersonal person. I've seen him described as an impersonal person. He could feel for the suffering of the poor, and he always maintained that caste at birth does not define your life. Egalitarian, indeed, all people equal, including women. That was his original message. Temple was always open to all. This certainly challenged the Hindu tradition, where Brahmins used to be the peak of the pyramid, the learned who knew the language, who could write and read, and as a consequence, held on to this information close, very tight to themselves, no different from Europe, where Latin was utilized in the same fashion until the printing press came about. Buddha challenged the monopoly of the Brahmins, the upper castes of the Hindus. Buddha also critiqued the practices of animal sacrifice, because he is very much a compassionate individual, did not like taking life. And I think he's rooted the ahimsa principle, which is really the principle of nonviolence. If you recall Gandhi and his nonviolence principle, he picked that up from the Jain tradition, which was born in the same time as Buddhism. So it gives you an indication of how this thought processes came down the line. Possible influences to Buddha could well have been the arrival from Persia, Greece, Palestine, other ideas. So I'm just going to repeat a few things. Buddha did try different ways to find the meaning of life. He spent ascetic life, 6 years, and then eventually he came back, awakened, enlightened, found the middle way. He taught the training of the mind included that of ethical being, self-restraint, meditation practices, and mindfulness. I repeat, mindfulness, which has become highly fashionable today. You ask any psychologist and he'll spend a lot of his or her time dwelling in mindfulness. It has become an accepted practice, including where I am at Heart and Stroke Foundation. Both yoga and mindfulness have become a key way to look after your health, both mental and physical. Now on the bottom right, you see the statue. This is the Buddha at Bamiyan in Afghanistan. If you recall, not too many years ago, it was the Taliban who blew these statues up, utilizing mortar. This is before it was blown up. Buddha talked about dukkha, which is the suffering or impermanence, anxiety. We make ourselves suffer because we do not see clearly, so he stated. We tell stories of what we think and do and make up and take ownership and defend these ideas to death. Stories are distorted conceptions. So when you do mindful meditation, it's an attention, observe with care, ignite your senses, live in the present, reduces anxiety, reduces emotions, and manages to keep you temperate. He taught for 45 years, built a large following, both in the Mahayana tradition and the Theravada traditions. Many modes of meditation still exist, not different from the Hindu meditation practices. Now, Schopenhauer said, attempting to fulfill desires is an unending chain. Similar line of thought. So 4 noble truths are something that Buddhism talks about, which is detaching yourself from the existential anxiety, and the 8-fold path about ethical living, compassion for all. He gave us a mode of morality, be temperate, no starving to death, looking for self-realization, did not condone a belief in one book, or sacrifice, or prayers and caste systems. So his sequence of birth, maturity, renunciation, search, awakening, and the final, nirvana. You heard of nirvana. Everybody talks about nirvana. The guy walks up to a hot dog stand and he says, what would you like on your hot dog? He says, make me one with everything. The hot dog guy turns to him and says, oh, you must be a Buddhist. You want nirvana. Moving along. Is this a religion? It's secular. There's no God figure. Is it a pluralistic, global, or is it pessimistic? These are questions that come to mind. Hoping for a better life through better actions in today's life. Buddhism focuses on contemplative method by use of introspection, not looking for answers outside, but looking for answers within. Cosmic awareness is what he called nirvana. Being able to focus a clear mind, and it's between the thinking spots that you find that tranquility. I think if you have followed meditation by Deepak Chopra, he just says, find those little gaps in between your thoughts, because that's where you'll find peace. Nirvana is a concept in Buddhism. It's a state of realization that there is no self, no soul, but emptiness. Sunya. Sunya in Sanskrit means zero. Zero. Just do not identify with yourself, your ego. So we're basically saying there is no self. There's a bigger self, the cosmos. A little bit of a contrast with Hinduism here. Hinduism says you reach ultimately moksha. Buddhism says you ultimately reach nirvana. What's the difference? Moksha is a concept which really talks about self as an atma. There is two components in Hinduism. The soul, as known in Christianity, soul is what we Hindus call atma. And then the atma dissolves into the cosmos, which is what they call the Brahman. Brahman could be very much equated to the Shunya, which is mentioned by the Buddhists. Shunya means nothingness. Brahman means everythingness. So what is the difference? Is it infinite? Where does infinity end? So we're talking about being mindful of yourself. I just want to be mindful of time here. Ethics, values, ideals, devoid of religion. Adaptable. It stays very current, Buddhism. This is why it gains popularity, especially with intellectuals, because they are seeking answers. And quite often, these seem a lot more palatable than a personal God. Anyone can follow the principles of being a Buddhist. It allows for skepticism because there is no divine overseer. Meditation, mindfulness allows clarity and focus. fMRI has already proven that. In fact, people who meditate a lot have got certain parts of the brain differently developed. And it's not a placebo effect because it's been proven as a physical change that occurs within the human body. Buddhism is only 1% Indian religion now. Though it began in India and though it overtook India, today there's only 1% of population that is Buddhist. So it makes you wonder why, what happened here? Buddhism lost its hold perhaps because, and this is my conjecture, the monastic renunciation lifestyle is a difficult model for a society to flourish. Because we do need functioning institutions that allow for growth, allow for people to sustain themselves. So what happens when wars occur? If you're going to be all ascetic or monks, who is going to go fight? There are certain areas where Buddhism was not doing justice to the changing times which arrived in India. And I'll discuss that further now. Some of the Buddhist quotes: the root of suffering is attachment. Guard your thoughts well. Radiate boundless love for everybody. Buddha said holding on to anger is like grasping a hot burning coal with an intent at throwing it at somebody, but the only person who really gets burnt is the person holding the coal. Nagarjuna is a very interesting character around 160 BC, and he really talked about philosophies of mental fabrications. And he's the one who came up with the concept of shunya, zero, nothingness. The Vietnamese philosopher, suffering necessary, no mud, no lotus. It's only through adversity that we realize what success is, and it's a yin yang. We sacrifice our health in order to make wealth. I did that. And then we sacrifice our wealth to try and get back our health. Dalai Lama. Business was very good to me. By 53, I had retired, but it took a pound of flesh, as said Shakespeare. I had 90% blockage in the heart. These are things that we sometimes forget. Hermann Hesse wrote the Siddhartha, story of Gautam Buddha's young age. Some of the famous Buddhists, David Bowie, George Lucas, Goldie Hawn, Steve Jobs, Ginsberg. Some quotes are there for you to read, very much in line of what I've been saying. I like the happiness is always an inside job. I think that's a good one. I'll move along. And I'll take a break for 5 minutes, allow for some Q&As, and stop sharing the screen for now.
Shishir?
Yes, Tori.
Yeah, I would only just say this is a tremendous amount of information. It's just excellently put together and overviewed. So I really appreciate it. And it's almost like it's too much for finding an intelligent question. so much. So,
well, I thank you, Tori. Where do I mail the check?
Yeah, that's right. I think put this into a little booklet and give talks around the country and the continents. You'll do well.
I thank you very much, Tori, for your kind comments. If there is no other questions, I can proceed to the next person. John, is that okay? You're muted.
I just want to ask a question then myself, right?
Okay.
Which is this? I'm studying a lot about right now about perfectionist versus non-perfectionist, philosophies, and the distinction between, on the one hand, a perfectionist ethics versus a non-perfectionist politics. Politics can't be perfectionist because it has to. But this ultimate going to the nothingness seems to be the opposite of, perfectionism. Is that the correct, I mean, like the idea of perfectionism was be that the purpose of human life is eudaimon, human flourishing. And that human flourishing is definitely individual, agent, relative, and all of that kind of thing, right? And perfection to ethics is to improve your own ethical outlook, do the right thing according to your own lights. Whereas here we seem to,
it's an interesting topic, because what we're saying, perfectionism,
yeah,
if we were to seek perfectionism, I think we'd be seeking forever. Seeking a good life, because perfectionism means different things to different people at different times in their lives. So if that is the case, it's always an elusive moving target. As a business person that I am, I always felt that you come to a point where you think it's close enough to perfection and let's move on. This is how pragmatism works. It really decides at what point does the returns no longer justify the additional effort. So this is my way of looking at perfectionism, because I'm a much more a generalist than a specialist. And why? Well, generalists can probably connect a lot more dots and be able to see and interlink ideas. A perfectionist sometimes get lingered into one small area of focus.
Yeah.
So it can be kind of looked at in both ways.
So would you say then that Buddhism, and we're going to come on to Hinduism, and it is non-perfectionist? It's like a non-perfectionist ethics, would you say?
I think it's going to really track down to that this life that we see as is, as being the separate consciousness between you and me, is a delusion. Mm-hmm. That's where it goes towards, which is what they call Maya.
Yes.
So I see Howard's got his hand up.
Sure. I was just, and John made me think of some of the possible connections between sort of Taoism and Buddhism. And I wonder if in Buddhism as well, there's this sense that striving too hard or trying too hard to achieve something is distortive and destructive. So, in our quest for perfection, in our quest for achievement, some of that ends up, I think, being in some ways a quest for dominance, either dominating nature or dominating other people or dominating systems of understanding. So I think maybe the flip side of that sort of ambition is the letting go, which I think is psychologically difficult for people coming up in our traditions. We always feel we have to make, we have to create, we have to better. And I think, at least what I know, the Taoist tradition, that ends up being very, very destructive, rather than just letting things be.
Totally, you're absolutely right. Letting go is such a big part about Buddhism. Being able to let go is really not only takes pressure off you, it takes pressure off your way of existence. And realize when you do let go, you are living and allowing the other one to be compassionate, the other's point of view. It's not a game of winners and losers. Ronan, I'll take one more and then move on. Ronan.
Yeah, thank you, Shishir. It's very interesting stuff. I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on the notion of karma. It's an often misunderstood, I think, concept. It's used a lot, by everyone. My understanding of karma is very limited, but I do understand that it has, as you pointed out, to do with cause and effect. However, does Buddhism say that if you behave badly, that you necessarily will get what you sow, or is it a little more subtle than that? Can you just elaborate on it? I'm very curious about it.
I think we've quite often seen in our own lives that when we are kind to somebody and we do that thing that brings two people closest together, which is smile at each other, it's very much a reciprocal thing. And it breaks all kinds of tension down. And there's a cause and effect right in progress as I speak. And that kind of cause and effect is really, it's not a question of going into punishment for having done bad deeds or you go to hell. It's really much more a self-returning consequence of how you behave. And I think we can all relate to that when you're a professor and you're talking to your student in one way, another professor who is high and mighty does not speak with his people. you can see the difference. The karma is in place right there and then. And quite often, some of the things that we did in the past come back, and where you least expect it, a word of gratitude from somebody you didn't even remember having done the favor to. So I think it really makes for a compassionate society.
Okay, so the reason I'm kind of asking about karma is because it's not uncommon to see people who do very nasty things and yet live very good lives and lives without a lot of difficulties or suffering or anxiety for that matter. They're very happy and yet they're not particularly good. How does karma deal with that issue, or can you explain how that's possible in the concept of karma?
This is an interesting question, because you might say it is the people, what was the saying, that it's really the bent tree that doesn't get chopped down. The straight ones do get chopped down quickly because they're easy to cut and turn into lumber. The bent trees are the ones that survive. And that really indicates basically your point, which is, well, crooked people become rich. And how come? Then they got all the power. Then the question comes about, do they sleep well at night? I was in a little village once in India. My daughter was maybe 4 years old, and a bus drives in, and all kinds of little children come out and play around her, fascinated by her Canadian accent. First thing they come and say to me, and I know these people don't have 2 pennies. They say, would you come to our home and have dinner with us tonight? Now, who's the happier one? Sometimes makes you wonder.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, that's an interesting answer. Thank you.
Thank you. If you guys don't mind, I'll continue and share screen again. So we covered Buddha so far. Now, Hindu Vedic tradition, just very quickly refreshing your mind. There is the artha, being pragmatic, find your prosperity, karma, cause and effect, dharma, codes and ethics, moksha, get released from reincarnation. There's another one which I did not mention, but I think since we're in a jovial mood, I might as well. It's called the Kama. You probably heard about Kama Sutra. Well, Kama is really hedonism. That's also part of the Shastras, which means joy, pleasure. And they say all religions tell you to love your neighbors. Hindus are a little bit more specific in how. Moving on. Becoming one with Brahman, becoming one with cosmos, moksha, which is nirvana in Buddhism, 4 ways. 1, bhakti, devotion. Surrender yourself to the being and the being will look after you. Karma, doing duty without expectations of rewards. Raja, physical, mental temperance. And finally, Gnan Yoga. It's written by J, but it's really pronounced Gnan Yoga. It's self-awareness and managing your own self, which is really very similar to the meditation. You might, before you ask me, I'll answer this question. You might say, well, yoga, I do yoga every week. How does that connect? Well, yoga that you do every week is really a practice of being able to be calming, both healthy body, mind, spirit connection. It brings that all about. If you do it right way, if you consider it just an exercise, yes, it's an exercise too. It's great to exercise. But this is where it comes from. It comes from Patanjali, which is part of 2 yogas, which is the meditation yoga and the knowledge yoga, as well as the action yoga. So there's a lot of combination here, but that's the yoga that we normally consider to be the practice that we go and do exercises with. So just giving you a little background on that. Now I'm going to talk about Sankara. His real name is Adi Sankaracharya. I'm sure Tori can say that very quickly, very fast. Adi Sankaracharya. Okay, Upanishad is really his part of giving back to the Hindu tradition. He brought Hinduism away from the gods, goddesses, mythologies into the philosophical side. And he brought in Advaita. Advaita is the theory of monism. The Atma, the soul, is really within you, and it's really very much undifferentiated consciousness, not differentiated consciousness. So if I'm here, John is there, even on his birthday, I consider him separate. But if you look at it from Shankaracharya's point of view, we are one, because we have not got a differentiated consciousness. This is where Advaita, and he called it Advaita Gnan, which is knowledge, undifferentiated monism. This is very different from monotheism. So monism is really a non-dualistic oneness with the Brahman, which is the ultimate. And the word that is used in Sanskrit is Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat says, you are that. You are the cosmos. It's just that you have differentiated yourself and you identified with your ego, with yourself as an identity. Now, this is the time period around 800 AD. What was happening in India? Turk, Arab conquests were happening before in the 700-800 years. This is after Muhammad had formed the Islamic religion. In the 1200s, the Mughal Empire arrived. Mughal Empire is really a descendants of Genghis Khan. Portuguese arrive around 1500, and then the English arrive around 1600. So just give you some context of time when Shankaracharya was around and what happened thereafter. Monotheism, which is quite often confused with monism, is dualistic. It separates you from God, separates one individual from the next individual, separates one living thing from another living thing. He was born in South India, in Karnataka. Very clever young boy. Father dies early. He renounces material life and becomes an ascetic. Many believe that he left his body, and in the tradition of Buddhism, Hinduism, they don't say you die, you leave your body because you continue to circulate through the reincarnation cycle. He left his body at the early age of 32, and there's a temple after him in the Himalayas. His philosophy was Upanishad focused. He stepped away from the mythologies. He looked deeper into the Vedas, existence, Atma, which is really, you might call a soul, consciousness, Chit, existence is Sat, and bliss is Anand. You can actually get to Anand, which is total bliss, which is found through moksha. Upanishad was not written by one individual. It's a living tradition. And even today, a lot of people are adapting, changing, and making it fit today's values and today's customs. As part of the whole, it states we are interconnected. So it's pantheistic, including plants, any living thing. We're part and parcel of one and the same. Atma is unknowable unless we lose our individuality, which is what we call our differentiated consciousness. And they say world as we see it, because of the differentiated consciousness, is illusionary. You might have seen the movie Matrix. It kind of gives you an indication of how it is to be, that you're existing, but you're not there. One thing that Shankaracharya did not talk much about, and remember he passed away at 32, was codes of morality. He did not go there. He went so much more into the deeper understanding of the mind and the Brahman. He traveled widely in India and preached his Advaita philosophy and established monasteries. His God is without qualities. Individual selves, identities are illusions. Brahman is formless. is above all needs, qualities, and attributes. These are statements you also see in Bhagavad Gita. Some quotes from Shankaracharya. I'll let you guys read. I know you can read better than me. If you're done, I'll move along. Now we move on to the 1469. Sikhism. I mentioned to you the arrival of people from different lands into India, starting from 800 to around 1400. Nanak was born to an upper caste Hindu family. His father worked as an accountant for a Lodi, which is a Muslim family dynasty. He also worked with his father. The context was the times of Ibrahim Lodi, who was really the ruler of the Punjab area. He was defeated by Babur, who is a descendant of Genghis Khan, who took over the power then. These were the times when the Muslim dynastic empire was forming itself in the north of India. There were some good rulers and many tyrannical rulers as well. They reintroduced gulams, which is slaves, and they turned a lot of the people who were non-Muslims into slaves, higher taxation on those who were non-Muslims. Some of the gurus that came about after Nanak were put to death by the Mughal Empire. Some of the things that happened, Hindu caste systems, they were divided. There were differentiations between them. And this is about the time when British East India Company had made its mark. And they realized that there's enough divisions here to be able to take control. So though being a corporation, it finally became an empire with the help of soldiers, both from England and soldiers recruited locally. So what happened with Guru Nanak? He was a Hindu boy. He was an innovator. And he founded the tradition of Sikhism. Now, if any of you know Sikhs because you've seen them around with their turbans, their beards, and sometimes controversy, why do they carry weapons? And after 9/11, it became a big issue. They don't carry swords, they carry a small little penknife because it's their tradition. And I'll explain how that all came about. Sikh is a Pali word. Pali is a language used in the south of India in the Buddhist tradition, and it means a disciple. It's a pragmatic religion and a lifestyle. It's really more a lifestyle. It's a devotion-based religion, which means it is a bhakti yoga of Hinduism, which is total devotion and spend your time praying to God. Staying engaged in duties, responsibility, and create a just society, similar to the karma yoga of Hinduism. Those that have loved have found God. Very much against the monastic lifestyle, because they saw what happens when you become a monastic lifestyle. You become easy targets. And he saw how the Muslims overran the country. So he was very much against that lifestyle. He was asked once, what's happening to humanity? And he says, if all wise men are ascetic, what do you expect? He tried to learn from both Hinduism and the arrived Islam. He collected works of Kabir, a Sufi poet. Now, Kabir's poetry is just amazing. You probably heard of Rumi. He's again another Sufi. Nanak traveled to Mecca. He went to Medina, Saudi Arabia, Assam. He went to the Ganges. He went to Sri Lanka. He went to Tibet and Nepal. So he was widely traveled. He was preoccupied with social justice. He was a militant. He was a militant, but a pacifist. He did not believe in starting wars, but he believed in defending. He considered all humans equal, all children of God. What are the three principles of Sikhs? Number one, meditation and devotion. Second, truthful living. Number three, service to humanity. Have any of you ever been to a Gurudwara, their temples? I can't see too many hands, so I can't tell. But if you haven't, sometimes lunchtime, if you go in there, you'll be served a meal. No questions asked. Everybody's allowed in there and they serve meals every day. Service to humanity is very big for them. They found followers in Hindus, Muslims, Sufis, and most of the teachings were in Punjabi. They walked away from Sanskrit. They went to Punjabi, again, make it very local, very understandable. He opposed monopoly of Arabic, which is the language of the Islam, and Sanskrit, the language of the Hindus and Buddhists. He shows respect for all beliefs. Allah, Islam, Ishwar, Hindu, Jesus, Christian. Only one God, and truth is his name. It's a monotheistic religion. A little different. Monotheistic. They call themselves monotheistic, and yet you will see some of their quotations do not necessarily lean in that direction. Sikhs believe that there is one God, wonderful God called Veguru. And if you want to read the quote below, omnipresent, omniscient, his name is truth, only creator, fearless, without hate, immortal, beyond birth, beyond death, and only by his grace we live. He was the first of 10 gurus that came. And these were not Hindus. There are differences in scriptures, differences in social status, difference in the way they worship, and appearances. Sikh gurus have denounced the hierarchy of caste systems. You do not find castes in Sikhs. Sikhs is closer to Hinduism than Islam, as it retains some of the theories of karma and reincarnation. As far as Islam is concerned, it advocates monotheism, very much like Islam. The last guru, the 10th one, his name was Guru Gobind. And he's the one who said, I don't want this to become a continuation of a person's legacy. So he turned it all into a book, and he called it the Guru Granth or Guru Mukhi. So if you go to any kind of a Gurudwara, you will find Guru Mukhi there and Guru Granth. It's like a big book, and they read that. Some of the traditions, they are the Khalsa. Khalsa is really their tradition of 5 Ks. Kesh, long hair. They do not cut their hair. Kanga, always carry a comb on you. Stay well groomed. Kara, they wear a bangle in one hand. Kacha is a bit like our boxer shorts. And Kripan is a sword. In their days, they needed a sword. Now it's a token. They still carry a penknife. Just give you some traditional ideas on the Sikh ways of living. Some of their gurus were actually executed by the Muslim rulers, Mughals. Refresher, monotheistic, casteless, women equality, humanity, spiritual, just equal society. And they do have a lot of community affairs. They do always give back to the community wherever they are. We've got some politicians, and One of them sat with me at the board of Heart and Stroke Foundation, a very funny guy. He entered the reception just before me, and we had a new receptionist there. She didn't recognize the board members. So he goes in and says to her, "My name is Shishir Lakhani." Of course, she knows no different. And there I am standing behind him. I'm saying, why is he calling my name out? He turns to me and smiles. Says, "Got you this time." And he used to be our minister. Interesting people, very much communal. Some of their quotes: "He who regards all men as equals is religious. The world is a drama staged in a dream." Now here, you might realize this is the Maya tradition of Hindus, that the world is an illusion. The next line says, what should a yogi have to fear? Trees, plants, world that is inside and outside is he himself. Very pantheistic. Again, very much in the tradition of Hinduism. Those who have loved have found God. Pluralism. The last line. Countless are the ways of meditation. Countless are the avenues to love. So he pretty much took in all religions. And what do Hindus do? Anybody who they think is enlightened, they call them Hindus. Some common threads: existence, reality, universe as infinite, with no beginning, no ending. From idealism goes up to pragmatism. Perception is, now this is important, perception is based in the observer, not independent of it. And I think science kind of tells you that too. Schrodinger's cat, mindfulness, meditation, reincarnation, the variations. There is no God creator. Justice, consciousness is a subjective experience. My consciousness may show me different things from what Ronan might see. So it really is very, very important that we're able to notice that consciousness is not really something it's very unique to each individual. Worldwide influences, the continental philosophers really took on to this. So did the Romantics, Stoics, Transcendentalists, the introspective experiential. Now you might say, well, how can you prove this in science? Well, you can't, because it's experiential. It's not experimental. It's difficult. It's like Tori trying to explain to me the taste of chocolate. There's no words that he can tell me that I'll feel the taste of that chocolate. This is important distinction, and metaphors are used so beautifully in texts like this, because you know it's a game of no limits. Here are some quotes. What worries you masters you. Mindfulness. Rule your mind or it will rule you. This morning I was helping a business person and I said to him, your business is running you. You are not running your business. Happens to most of us, and it happens in all our lifestyles. Epicurus, yes, wonderful example. And my final masterstroke, guys. Thank you. I'll stop sharing and take any questions.
Yeah, and Shishir, just before you start with the questions, I'd just like to thank you on all our behalf for a very interesting presentation. That was truly excellent. You can hear Mike clapping anyway, and everyone else is clapping in sympathy.